you want to be treated.
Awesome, awesome. Well, and that's about 30 years as well?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so both of you. So we have about 60 years of law enforcement experience here to answer some of the tough questions that we will be asking tonight. So thank you so much for your service in the military, both of you, as well as your service to the community. So I got to say thank you before we go in, right? Because like I said, we have some tough questions tonight. But I also ask for those of you who aren't police officers, you know, listening to the stories of these two men, and then also thinking, Pastor, of what we have seen, of how law enforcement is viewed by the media and in the community. What are your thoughts of law enforcement right now?
I believe it's a really tough time with all the agendas that's out there. And, you know, just from the outside, not knowing much about law enforcement, some of the things that I see that are being pushed, like defunding the police, I'm just wondering, where do we go from there?
Who's going to answer the call?
Right. So
I'm not.
that is something that I really wanted to, you know, really wanted to hear from their perspective as well, because I'm not in law enforcement, but I know that can't be the answer to what happened, you know, with George Floyd or all the things that's taking place in the nation. So I wanted that's why I kind of take the sideline tonight, because I want to listen and dig in as well.
Amen.
And kind of hear from their standpoint, because you know there are things that I know in the medical field that you know law enforcement might not be and there's things that they know that we absolutely cannot know about it unless we talk to them, because we're in that world. So
awesome.
I'm kind of wanted to.
So you're eager to hear what's going to develop here tonight. Yeah. First Lady?
I am certainly eager to hear all of what's going to happen. I know, at least for me personally, my views on police has not changed. I am not one of the persons that I feel like the media and everything that is going on has influenced how I look at them, because I also think of it, me being a pastor, just like how some people would say, oh, you have some pastors and they're bad. And then you have these pastors and then, you know, they're good. And then you want to put everybody in a category that they're not, you know, it's not like that for everybody. So my heart has not changed for my expectation of them. And I am just, you know, I'm waiting to hear their hearts too. But for me, it's not changed. And I want to see better. I don't want to see the cops defunded, because who are we going to call? Ghostbusters? I'm serious. Like, who are we going to call? So I'm really, really ready to hear
Maybe
this.
they'll call pastors.
Oh, amen. Come on, that's good.
And then Chris, I mean, same question to you. What are your thoughts about law enforcement, or has this changed any of your thoughts about law enforcement?
Got you. So for me, it hasn't, very similar to First Lady, it hasn't necessarily changed it at all. Because I do understand in every profession, in every field, there are bad apples. There are perverted individuals in every single field. So just as with teachers, you know, there's some teachers who, they take advantage of their authority. And I don't want people to see me as one of those individuals. So the same thing with law enforcement. There are some law enforcement who have views that are it's called an unconscious bias, and they work on those biases, and then they perform their job with this mindset that is perverted. But I don't look at the whole police department as such. So therefore, my views have not changed.
Okay, awesome. And I think for me, having worked with law enforcement before and having very good friends who are peace officers, but also having 3 black sons, right, who I know in my community, they know my sons. I know these police officers, and I feel fine. But when I leave my community, I will have to say I have a certain level of fear. You know, and even for my children who are now college age and beyond college, and knowing that they are black men in America, when they are not in my community with the officers who know them, how are they going to view them? My oldest son is 6'4", right? And although he's an educated black man, he's an engineer, that community doesn't know that. They see a black man. So those are some of the things. And we did a poll on Facebook, and we got tons of questions in. So we're going to be asking some of those questions that our community really wants answered. All right? So let's start with the first question. Okay, so this is the good one. We know that there are good people, just like we've all said on here, and there are bad people in every profession. But when we talk about police officers, a bad police officer has the ability to take your life and take your freedom. So that's different. A pastor can't take my life or my freedom, neither can a teacher.
Right.
But a police officer can, right? And so as a police chief, as a former chief and a peace officer, how do you view the events of George Floyd? And how do you view that?
Well, it has definitely impacted our world, not just our country, not just a state, but the world. Because what happened there was basically, like they said, a modern day lynching that happened in front of millions of people because of technology. This is nothing new for the black man. It's been happening for years since we've been brought to this country. But with new technologies, now within seconds, the information is out there. And with this one, it was nothing that you could read. It was an actual video. It was live footage.
We all saw it. Yeah.
So the fact that you saw that in real time, like all the other peoples that were killed, and there's so many of us now, so many of our people getting killed, from females to males to even young children.
Right.
Those were by word of mouth, by print and paper. But to actually see it live impacted the world.
Yeah.
Not just blacks, but all nationalities were impacted because, like you said, you have sons. Well, people of another nationality also have those same sons and daughters. So they could visualize that being their relative, their loved ones. So me, myself, it still impacted my family because the fact of the career I've had. I still had to teach my son to put his hands on the steering wheel and say, yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am.
So you're saying you as a police officer, as a chief, as a city manager, having a black son, you still have those proactive messages?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Wow. That's pretty deep. Chief Kimball, I guess the same question to you. The events of George Floyd, it essentially, it gives such a negative light that was already there on law enforcement. But to see the other officers standing by, how did that impact your department in particular?
Yeah. I got to, I think back to the when I originally saw the video back in March, and I was kind of up late, and I was texting with a friend, and I kind of dozed off, and I woke up, and I saw what was unveiling on TV. It was about 11 o'clock in the evening, and I wasn't sure because I thought I was watching a movie, and then as I kind of gathered my bearings, and I said, this happened.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine who's on the East Coast, and we text each other, said, are you seeing what's going on television? He goes, we have a problem. Because just like my colleague over there said, we saw this. Before we heard about the things that have happened, now we have actually seen it.
Yeah.
And I was disgusted to see a person who wore a badge, who took the same oath as I did, to do that to another person under the authority of this badge. I was sick.
And smiled about it.
I was sick, so I went back to my staff and I said, did everybody see it? We saw it, and let's talk about it. So let's talk about to make sure how that can't happen in this community. What safeguards do we have? What training do we have and should we have? Moving forward, what relationships do we have in the community? And we had to say, we got to double down because things are, it's like when you saw Rodney King, when you saw JFK, the murder of all the space shuttle and all those things, it was burned into my memory. And I said, I have to do something. And as a staff, we made sure that can't happen here.
Right.
Oh, Jesus.
I cannot imagine the amount of stress or pressure that put on your department. I remember a statement shortly after that you put out in the press that this will not happen in my city. And if it does, you will be held accountable.
I can't, with 250, 60, 70 officers, can I control the actions, make sure that, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week between my officers in the jail and the officer in the street? I can't control those individual actions at any given time, but our philosophy is that of community policing, that we will engage in partnerships with anybody that's willing to listen and willing to talk, that we would try our best. We would try deep in our soul to make sure that things like that can't happen here. And God forbid they do. That collectively as a community, that we will make sure that it shouldn't happen and won't happen, and we'll deal with it.
Yeah. Chief, Mr. Davis, when you say community policing, for those individuals who don't know particularly what that means, what exactly is community policing?
Community policing is a partnership with your community. Like the chief said, you can't be every place at 24/7. So you're going to rely on your community to tell you what the problem is, as well as work with them as partners to solve the problems that they're having within their own community. So, in other words, they putting skin into the game as well as the PD, and that's what community policing is.
Okay. So, with that said, I don't know, Pastor, did you have an input in there?
Oh, no, I'm not yet.
You're just taking it all in. Pastor is taking it all in.
collecting data.
Collecting data. So when we talk about community policing, and that is what I hear you saying, Mr. Davis, is the community and the law enforcement, there's a partnership.
Absolutely.
Okay, so when we look at the events that's happened in the media of the killings, and there is a fear of the police now from the community, whether it is real or perceived, whether it is their own experience or an experience they saw on TV or vicarious trauma, whatever it is, but there is a fear. How do you partner with the community when the community is afraid of the police or they don't trust the police?
Yeah, we would hope that as the police chief, is that I hope that fear isn't there, but I have to acknowledge that the events that are happening nationally has an effect on our community here.
Right.
So I have to make myself available to my new friend here. I have to make myself to other clergy, I have to make myself available to the education system. I have to make myself available to the business system, and we form those partnerships. So it's not just a police problem. What we saw, the George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and all that other bad things, that's a community problem. There was a breakdown in the community, but the police wants to be part of that answer.
Okay.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's good, huh?
I am really feeling his heart, and because of all the things I think that's happening in the media, when you're not just listening to just a police officer on the street, this is the chief that's speaking. And this is our community, for those of us who are here and we're watching from, Killeen, Texas. And I'm like, this is his heart. This is how he's thinking, and this is what he's hoping. So I'm hopeful while I'm listening. I know the fear is there. I know what happened is real, but I'm also getting a sense of hope while I'm sitting here.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Chief, just a question. Did you find yourself implementing things in the department as a result?
Absolutely. We put a document, which is on our web page. We put out a reform package. Well, we looked at our use of force policy. We looked at our training procedures. On our website, there's about 6 points. There's a reform package, and please go to cleanpd.org, and you'll see that we put that out probably about a month and a half ago. And as of yesterday, we opened a transparency page on our police department website, so you can see the racial breakdown of the department: men, women, the minorities, the complaints, pursuits, our policies, our major policies, because the police department belongs to you, to the citizens. So we are trying to be transparent so that you know that it's your police department. So those things are on there. Our reform package and our transparency is available for everybody right now.
All right. And so make sure we put that website up there so individuals who are in the Killeen area, you are able to go to the Killeen website and definitely take a look at the KPD's website and their transparency page. But Chris, I have a question for you, because you have your ears to the community. You were a jail volunteer. You work with marginalized populations. You are in the school district virtually, or probably face-to-face now. Both. And then you also operate a mentoring program for young boys.
Yes.
What are you hearing from those populations as it relates to how they feel about law enforcement?
Well, to be
Just be truthful.
I'm be honest.
Just be truthful. This is, this show is not meant. Right. This show is not meant to be tied up in a bow. We really want to have a transparent conversation so that we can mitigate some of these concerns. This is the only way we can mitigate concerns is by being transparent.
Absolutely.
So ears to the floor. What are you hearing?
So on several fronts, the people are absolutely terrified. They're terrified. My students think that they're going to be killed. That's their first thought of police.
What is your age ratio of students we're talking about?
So my students I teach 8th grade, so they're between 13 and 15.
Okay, so 13 and 15-year-olds are terrified that they will be killed by the police.
Yes, that's their first thought of police.
Okay.
So the students I work with, because we have blunt conversations in my classroom. Yeah, so when we talk about it, that's their first thought, and so I, talk to them about conduct and, what is law enforcement, what's the purpose, what happened with George Floyd. We have those conversations in our classroom, and of course I'll say that publicly. And so with that being said, I belong to an organization called Let's Move. And so when we talk about it, we have a more understanding of what's going on, but we still have a mindset that, of accountability, like what's going to happen when these officers get into these situations. Are they going to have absolute, I think the word is immunity when these things happen, or will they be punished to the furthest extent of the law? So that's what we're looking at on those fronts, like what happens to these officers. We're looking at things like no-knock warrants and what justifies those things. So that's our mindset on that front. Like, how can we be a part of the change aspect? And how can we educate people to vote so that you can get people into office and city council that are going to make these changes?
So this is what you're teaching your kids?
No, this is on the Let's Move.
This is on your Let's Move.
The Let's Move platform that I volunteer for. When I teach my kids, I just teach them, hey, look, yes, sir, no, sir, being respectful, understanding what law enforcement does, what constitutes what a crime is, what, you do have what your rights are as far as when you are confronted with a police officer. You do have a right to remain silent, things like that. I do educate them bluntly.
Okay. But so we actually had a question from Facebook from a parent who says, what if I teach my child to do all of those steps? The yes, sir, the no, sir, the stop your car, put your hands on the dash, do all of those things, yet they encounter an officer who is having a bad day or whatever the situation, who treats them in a manner that they should not be treated. What do I do then? Or what else can I tell my child to do? And anybody can answer that on the panel.
Well, I believe in what I teach, I've taught my children and my former students as well. Still comply. Smile, still comply, because your parents can always hire an attorney. But if you end up dead, they cannot bring back the loved one. So comply, hire an attorney if necessary, but comply. Right. And because what they're looking for is a trigger.
My God.
If they're having a bad day, we don't know what's going on. But, and I say this because I'm going to break it down like this here. Only 2%, they did studies throughout years, only 2% out of 100 is what we consider bad cops, road cops, or those that doesn't necessarily follow the rule, but play by their own rules. But it gives the 98% of us a bad reputation. But the 98% have to work harder to ensure the public that we're there to protect and serve. But we still have to teach our children, just comply, because they're looking for a trigger. But if you comply and don't give that trigger, and if you end up in jail, you can always get an attorney to fight that and recoup whatever you may have lost.
Chief?
Yeah, it hurts my heart to answer this question because just again to know that there are people who are misusing their authority. But am I realist? Yes, it happens. I understand that. And what I have taught my boys and what I tell people, like in doctor's class, is that get through the traffic stop. I tell my boys, we're from Wisconsin. I don't care if it's 10 below, raise down all the windows, turn the lights on, and turn the car off, and just wait for instructions. You want to, if by chance you meet that 2%, you want to finish, you want to leave. And then we'll deal with the aftermath when it's over. Get all the information you can, find out if there's a body camera involved. If you can safely record the incident, record it, get the car numbers, time and date, make you some notes as soon as you can. But if you encounter that 2% or maybe 1%, survive it. Get through it, and then you work the complaint channels and the legal channels as necessary.
And this is something I've taught my children too. I've always said, come home alive.
You have to.
You know, I have a 23-year-old and a 20-year-old, and then I have a 5-year-old. And the other day, my 5-year-old said to me that. And so I think of my 5-year-old, I think of your 5-year-old, and we're in 2020, and we're still telling our black sons to come home alive. When do we change the narrative? When do we say, I don't have to teach you to come home alive, but I'm going to hold law enforcement accountable so that I don't have to teach you to come home alive, but rather I have to teach them, put your hand on somebody and you will be the one dead or in jail, right? So when do we change the narrative? Instead of teaching little black boys to come home alive, when do we change the narrative? Or how do we do it?
Exactly. I was just about to say that.
Yeah, Pastor, how do we do that?
Now I was just going to say the same question. When and how? Because,
Well,
you know,
when and how? When is now.
Say,
Right now.
say it
Yes,
again.
sir.
When is now?
Yes,
When
sir.
is November 3rd?
yes, sir.
That's
Okay.
now. The movement is worldwide now. The focus is now. So we have to educate ourselves on the issues. We have to educate ourselves on how to vote, when to vote, what to stand up for. We have to put people in place at the local level, the county level, state level, and the federal level. You got to have people that have the same ideologies you have. You can't just sit at home or you go right in the gorilla that got killed in the Dallas Zoo, put him on the ballot and write him in. You can't do that. We're paying the consequences for that type of action right now. So November 3rd, and I'm telling everybody, get out and vote. Vote wisely. Don't sit on the table or don't sit under the bridge. Get out and get to the ballot. They trying to put this fear in you about COVID. Put a mask on. Grab a bottle of water. Grab you a chair. But be patient. Go vote because they're hoping to make you stay at home.
Okay.
And, you know, and if I can't, Pastor
Yeah,
Nehemiah,
yes, sir.
and I think to piggyback on what the manager said is also, it starts now with this conversation. Today in this church at 6 o'clock is now having these conversations. You have to have, if you're in a relationship, their relationships aren't always, you know, roses and dandelions and unicorns. There's ups and downs in a relationship, and having tough conversations, open conversations about what's wrong, how do we fix it, and what's right. There's police departments doing things right. So let's talk about how we, in a partnership, can take what's good about what we do, because, you know, we hear all the bad things about law enforcement.
Yeah.
But we you know, we arrest drug dealers, we arrest rapists, we arrest murders. We do some right things. 99% of our traffic stops are done without incident. So let's concentrate on what we're doing right and how the next community can do it. The next community, that community, this community, and then and it spreads. I
Yeah.
think you have to focus on the good sometimes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll deal with the bad. Collectively, we'll deal with the bad. But there's a lot of good things. There's some police chiefs that won't sit and have this conversation. But luckily, here in Killeen, have a police chief that will have that conversation.
Well, I
good
can
or
call
bad.
you.
Yeah, well, I didn't know what was going to happen
Yeah.
today, but I'm willing to come here and we'll talk about it
have the
and we'll work our
conversation.
way through it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you know, Chief, I think that is so important what you said, Chief Kimball, as well as Mr. Davis, having those tough conversations. And we've been having that. We've been
Yes.
having
Oh,
that
yes.
here on
Absolutely.
the Overcomers panel, where we've talked about the church and racism.
Yes.
Right? And we've talked about these hard conversations because it is so relevant right now that you cannot reform any change without having the hard conversations. So I want to thank you guys for being in the hot seat, because I didn't tell you any questions I was going to ask.
No, you didn't.
I just said come and be here. But thank you for trusting me, because like I said, I am going to ask you some hard questions because our community would like to know. Right? And like Chris said, there are real fears, whether they actually had an encounter with law enforcement or if it's vicarious trauma of what was seen on television, they were impacted. Okay? And
Can I
of
say
course.
something, Minister? So, you know, the principle of the root.
Yeah.
Always try to go. So, what's the root of? Because you cut a tree down, if
Yeah.
the root is still in the ground, and it's connected to water and minerals, it's going to grow back the same tree.
so what is the root?
So,
Education.
is there a root? Is there
Education.
can we go back instead of trying to catch it on the end of it? Go back a little bit and dig back a little bit to where And is there a route? Is there something that can be done or addressed? Not
Right.
necessarily change, but address.
I think, Pastor, some of the root, and I think one of the things we have to look at is the history of law enforcement, right? Particularly when we talk about the history of law enforcement in the black community, right? And we talk about policing. And why was law enforcement formed to begin with? When you look at the history
They go capture
of America,
slaves, to recapture slaves.
right? It was to recapture slaves. It was to protect property. And so, if you have generational trauma with law enforcement about slavery, Jim Crow, the civil rights movement, water hoses, all of these things, there is a negative thought when you think of law enforcement. And so that is the history of it. That is the root. And so if we have a system that's built on racism, on institutionalized racism and systemic racism that excludes or continues to oppress marginalized populations, and then the expectation is that there's no change, but there's no policy change. So the very systems it really hasn't changed. Right? And so you have black people policing black people with the same policies and systems that oppress.
And the change don't happen because if the root is still there.
Yeah.
Again, you can cut down this department, you cut down this, put this fire out, you can, address the isolated incident. But again, if the root is not addressed.
Yeah.
And I feel that you addressed that. Again, it goes back to what I said earlier, through legislation. The law of the land is what's made, it's what makes society. But you have to look at how many minorities actually sits in those seat of power that makes those decisions. How many of them that sat there for 30, 40 years with like you said, the same old mentality.
Yes,
voice
sir.
and membership.
Yeah,
There's no voice,
right.
there's no membership.
So it never changes. So it goes back again, we start today. You can get out and protest, and believe me, I didn't protest and picket a lot. That's why I got my nickname. But the fact is, doing all that, but if you don't go to the ballot box and make a difference, if you don't write or make calls, what they say is the squeaky wheel that gets the most oil.
Yes, sir.
We haven't been squeaking enough.
Right.
And I'm not just talking about African Americans. I'm talking about minorities as a population total. We haven't squeaked enough. So that's why we have the system we have today, because nobody squeaked enough.
So you're speaking to the root there.
To the
You're
root.
speaking to the
Right
root
now.
of change.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
So
good.
that's where the change come in.
That's good.
Yeah.
Get
But I mean,
involved.
yeah, but so we'll say that we have people like Chief Kimball, and we know Chief is a great guy, but Chief can't do it all by himself. As great as he is,
And that's
every
what-
city is not clean. Every county is not Bell County where you can call your police chief and have a conversation, and he's gonna come out. So for our viewers out there who are in, Chicago, North Carolina, New York, or wherever they are, and they're not able to reach out and touch their chief like we are to touch Chief Kimball or to touch Manager Davis over here, how can they reach the root? What can they do? Because I hear you saying vote, but I can also hear populations out there saying we've been
Yes.
voting for years.
Yes, and I think that's where I'm probably going to be saying, I think we must exercise the right to vote. I mean, when you look at the root of everything, now that black people, I'm sorry I have to be so black and white about stuff, now we have that right to vote, and we should exercise it. That's a part of our freedom.
Right.
That was something that was changed, at least in the policy.
Right.
So one of the things, so even after we have voted, right, something else needs to happen, because it doesn't matter who is going to sit in the place of power. Something has to happen in the heart of every single community, and this is why we don't just turn to the president. We're also looking at our community leaders.
The city council.
This is the reason why we're looking at them, because when I sit here tonight and I hear Chief's heart, I am also looking at Chris. You have a program that you're you're reaching out there. You're hearing what's going on. And with I'm sure you're obviously dealing with a lot of angry black men. A lot of angry black men. I'm not sure what you're doing to quell the anger that we've seen in the nation, why a lot of it didn't happen in Killeen. Obviously, Chief as well has been working.
Yeah.
and he's partnering with different people who are willing to do, community policing.
Yes.
But I am sitting here, and what I'm recognizing is how much I did not know. Because if you have a program like that, and Chief is here seeing all of what's happening. Look at Manager Davis, and these programs are here in the community, but we don't touch each other. So are we really helping, using our sphere of influence for the change to really happen? Because now that I sit here and I hear his heart as my police chief, because this is where I live, something in me begins to be obligated now to partner because I know what scripture says. And if I'm not just going to look at it from the political point of view and just the government point of view, what does the scripture says? Romans chapter 13, the Bible makes it very clear. It says the law enforcement, the authorities that are there, God put them there. It wasn't just the government. So this wasn't man's idea. This was God's idea. And we talk about the fear of police. What did the scripture say? The Bible said that fear comes usually because of, it says people who do right should not fear the authority. The only time I really fear the police is when I'm speeding.
I don't think you should admit that.
Don't worry, I've been working on that since I came from Jamaica. I'm being delivered, right? But something in me begins to move once I see that speed stuff going on, because it clicks something in my mind and in my heart to tell me you're doing something wrong and there's consequences for this.
Right.
So I think there has to be education, but not just that. There has to be community.
Right.
How much work is the church doing? I'm talking from the spiritual point of view now, because I'm a pastor. I'm not the chief, I'm not the manager, I'm not Sir Chris right here, and I'm not Minister Kerry, who's doing amazing stuff, right? But I'm thinking in my heart, like, we are wanting this change, but how much are we willing to participate? How much are we willing to participate because the change is sitting right here.
Yeah.
The change is sitting right here.
Yeah. So what I hear you saying, First Lady and Pastor, is that we have a root, and the root was negativity, but now that we have individuals who are willing to be a part of the solution, there has to be a community partnership.
Yes.
We have to get, and that's what community policing is that partnership. This is how we effect change.
I actually felt that really sincerely.
You're about to run?
No, but the power of community policing, because partnering with your community, like Chief said, is like the police department functions with the community.
That's right.
And so that's the strength of the community.
Yeah.
It's not the police over there and the community over here.
That's right.
The strength of the community is coming together. Hey, officer, I just saw someone walk down the block. They don't belong in this neighborhood. And tomorrow somebody's car got broken into, things like that. I can see those dynamics.
That's
right.
How powerful that is. So it save a whole lot of hassle with the community and working together.
Chief, did you want to comment on that?
And the great thing about that, Pastor, is then you have the community, then you have the subset of the community. You have the faith-based leaders that we get in and we deal with the faith-based, because I know as a police chief that there's people will talk to you about issues, but they ain't gonna talk to me about them.
Absolutely.
And then if you and I develop that relationship, as we talked about, then we'll work on the problem. To the business leaders have issues. We want a vibrant community. We want a healthy tax base. You want to open a business free of crime. So I have to help deal with the business leaders. Then I have to talk, and we deal with the education community. We have to find out why black boys are scared of police. That's unhealthy.
Yeah.
We have to deal with that. Then I have to come and help you deal with that to squash that fear.
So he can go back and communicate that to the...
That's right. That's that community policing at some of the root level.
And I want to piggyback on that. Also, you got to have the conversation. A lot of parents don't want to have a conversation with their small children. You got to have the conversation, because if you don't have that conversation, you put these blinders around this child. When that child get out in an open world and you're not around, and at this age, they're beginning to form opinions and they begin to see things that you're trying to shield them against. How do that child take that? He's going to be fearful, nightmares, crying, run to mom, run to dad. Why? Because he's looking for answers. So you as a parent should be able to communicate with them and not let the streets teach them, not let the teachers teach them. You teach them.
Yes.
and teach them the right way.
And something stood out for me here, just when we talk about education. He's in a very, very critical, crucial place.
Crucial.
That he can make a difference.
That's right.
And so now you talk about the morality of people who are in his position.
Yeah.
Jesus.
What are their stance on the issue? And this is where you'll find those system breakdown. You'll find those, kids with perceptions and perspectives and different lenses, right? So again, like you said, Chief, connecting with the educator.
Yeah.
And the educator who is in now connection with the youth can teach those things, because they're not going to sit with you or get the opportunity, but he's with them every day.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is
So-
powerful. One of the things I think, Minister Kerry, is a stronghold that stops us from working together on a community level. And I honestly, sitting here and just feeling and seeing all of this, have to think about it for myself, is growing up, I was taught to mind my own business. And so I don't know, for everybody else, how it affects them, but when I'm being raised and I'm taught, mind your own business. So if I see somebody doing something, unless it involves my world, I'm not taught to report that.
My God.
Right.
I can see abuse next door to me. I can see all sorts of stuff happening. And we've been taught growing up, mind your own business. If it doesn't include your auntie, your cousin, your mama, us four and no more, then we're not calling the cops.
Right.
But I feel like something has to happen in the soul of our community where that has to shift. And again, this is where it
Community
begins.
policing.
The change is, the change is sitting right here.
Those saying snitches get stitches.
Yeah,
I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking the same thing.
laying in a
And so I
ditch.
do have, because I'm thinking of our viewers out here who are listening to this conversation, and probably some of the children that you work with who would ask the question, because my role is to ask some of the hard questions. And I hear what we're saying about the church. But when we think that every case, and every case we know it's different, right? And we don't have all the facts as it relates to things that happen. But when we think of people who were minding their business, people who were not doing anything bad or nefarious, like Breonna Taylor, who was sleeping,
Right.
Tamir Rice, 12-year-old boy who was playing, a Tatiana Jefferson in our own home, Stephen Clark, Botham Jean, Philandro Castile, Alton Sterling, and so many more names. When we think of them, how do we explain that to our children not to be afraid? Because you could be minding your own business, being good, being a 12-year-old child playing, and you are harmed. So how do we have those hard conversations with them? How do we begin to change the narrative when we see this on the news, and then most recently in Kenosha? How do we have these hard conversations with our children who have very real fears? And I'm going to start with you, Chris. What do you say to your kids?
So, to my students.
To your students.
Yeah, I try to be very blunt. And so I tell them, I try to put images of black excellence before my students. So we watch all sorts of motivational films and people who've overcome poverty and overcome obstacles. So they see that you're able to be excellent. And I do tell them, there is, this is what happens in law enforcement at times, but I let them know that that's not the majority. So I do let them know that the chances are small statistically, like that those things will happen, but the Tamar Rices are real.
Yeah.
So I let them know that, I don't want to separate them and put them in fantasy land, that they can walk around as if they'll never be harmed, but I do let them know, hey, look, this is a possibility. You do want to be aware of your surroundings, be aware of who you're associating with, but also know that this is a systemic problem that has happened over a number of years because of how law enforcement did originate. Like you said, Jim Crow. Then you have things like mass incarceration, things with Ronald Reagan, et cetera, and how those things just developed through the course of centuries. So I just let them know that there's a balance. But I try to instill that you do not want to walk around in fear, because fear does all sorts of things to your immune system, and I don't want to get into all of that.
So
but-
don't operate in the
Yeah, I
spirit
tell
of
them, no,
fear,
I do not.
but be aware.
Where?
I tell them
Be
you're going to be.
aware.
That's it.
I like that. Don't
fear is real,
operate in
though.
fear, but be aware.
Oh, yeah,
Let's
exactly.
tweet that one right there. That's
I just coined that so nobody else take it.
We did. We're gonna share that one.
And the fear is real.
Fear is real.
The fear is so real. real, and I hate that I have to admit these things because it makes me a little vulnerable. The fear is so real because a few years ago, you know, before, I think we're switching over from probably the time when Obama was coming out of office and stuff like that. And I remember when a lot of that was happening and the whole situation was happening in Dallas. And I have to be honest to say, Minister Kerry, that one of the reasons why I purpose in myself to drive my husband, who is a black doctor, to work was because of that fear. And I expressed on the show when we talked about racism. So, you know, one of the fear with the police is, as for black people, it's not the fear of cops, just the fear of cops. The truth is there is a legitimate fear where black people do fear white cops. The fear is real. I cannot, and you talk about the hard conversation. I shared that God had to check my heart as a Christian, not just as a black woman, as a Christian, when I begin to tell my son verbiage like, you are a black man. And that stemmed from my experience because I went in the shop. I was not looking like this. If y'all see me outside of here, y'all won't recognize me except by my voice. And so I really looked like a bomb. Like you would just think, I just walked in the place and I guess she's trying to figure out, why am I in this store? What am I gonna buy here? Because I don't look like what the store, like I can afford anything there. And I usually just look like that. It's just it's something I obviously need to work on now that I know. And minutes later, the police came and was circling my car and they did not move. And that thing almost broke my soul. That thing was real. And we were there. We said to ourselves that we could never, ever work there again. My husband was the only black doctor, and I never forgot. The CEO of the hospital had to come to apologize to him because he was seeing a patient that looked at him and tell him, you are black. He's there helping that person, but because he's black, I don't know what was in the individual mind. And so for the first time in my life, I experienced racism. And so once everything started happening, I always had in the back of my head, even though I'm a Christian and even though I believe God, when I saw that innocent people, I'm not talking about people who were on the run, I don't know what they were doing. Innocent people were being hurt, were being not just hurt, killed. Something happened in my heart, and I have to learn how to trust. Now I have to learn how to trust.
Yeah.
I have to know, believe that just as how it is in the church, that every pastor is not going to do the things they said pastors do. I have to have that same trust in those who God has placed in the community. And that takes something from, that's what I'm saying, the participation can't just come because you're told to. Something has to happen in the heart of the individual for it to happen in the heart of the community. And I had that fear, and when we were driving, I would be saying to my husband, like, I didn't even want him to change his scrubs. I wanted him to keep everything on him when he was driving. Because I had the fear of, in the middle of the night, driving 2.5 hours home, if somebody's, and then because we were driving BMWs and Range Rovers, I was so happy when we got a Honda for a work car. No, because I always had the fear of, I'm gonna be asked now where I get stuff from and this. So the fear is real.
Yeah.
It is real.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I had to say it. It's just true. My heart was
You
there.
know, I said this before. We were talking about, you know, the church and racism. And we spoke about learned behaviors. We
Yeah.
spoke about how race, you know, I wasn't raised in Jamaica as to be introduced to racism. In Jamaica, we saw it as a culture exchange.
Right.
We give them jelly coconut, they give us American candies. And so it was a culture exchange, and we were excited little kids. We didn't,
Yeah.
we,
We
we
liked
weren't
how they
exposed to. So when I came to New York City, you know, I remember Fordham Road, you know, these same thing. You go into these stores, you're a black person. Everybody, it's like everything stops and they're watching you. And you're moving around and you just, it's like you cannot be comfortable shopping. You have money in your pocket to shop, to buy whatever everybody's have, but you're not comfortable shopping. That's the real experience. You walk in a store, and no matter what store, you're just not comfortable shopping.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? I was in those places. I lived that life in New York. So it was a culture shock to me. I didn't know what was happening. I was wondering, what? I mean, I don't understand. So start going to school. Start learning the history of African Americans in this country. Start learning that. And so what I found out, so what I started doing, I I started to go to school. I said, this United States for me is a land of opportunity. And I'm here for the opportunity that I never had in Jamaica. And so what I did here, I started to go to school. As a typical Jamaican young black man, I was working 3, 4, 5 jobs. I was just working, if you see, and working in, military, college, school. And today, I live to see being an emergency physician. I'm working alongside the police officers, white and black. And so when they, I don't want to say this, but when I get pulled over now, I don't think of me getting a ticket. Honestly, I could say I've never gotten a ticket since I've been a doctor. Chief, don't give me a ticket. but
I'm sorry.
And the reason why is that the police officers, we work together in the community. And you see, that comes back together. We work together in the community. Right. So we come together. We're taking care of the same. I'm taking care of the community. They're taking care of the community. They come to the emergency room. We're working together. We're sharing information, and we work together as a team. So with mutual respect. It's not because I'm a doctor. With mutual respect. Yeah. Right? As working together. We're talking about community policing. We're talking about working together. Now we're talking about that comes along with, okay, officer, I got pulled over on my way to work, and it says, I heard about you. You're Dr. Coffee. I'm like, wow. So they spoke about what car I drove, my route, where I work, in the police department. And he was like, Dr. Coffee, slow down a little bit. I don't speed, y'all. I don't know when I'm late.
Chief, I don't speed anymore like that most times. Like that most times, on most days.
I heard 3 confessions.
Keep talking.
3 confessions.
I got my Alpha and Omega ticket, my first and my last, and that was the end of it.
So I want to finish that story with this, that comes right back to partnering with the law enforcement. Partner with the community.
Yeah.
That was my way of partnering with the community, which now we're working in symbiosis with each other, doing the same thing, and working together with mutual respect for, that we're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And so I don't speed, even though I know if the grace is there. Being a medical doctor, I do not speed. I try to.
Say it one more time. Say it one more time.
I don't take advantage.
He reminds me. He's like, honey, slow down.
I always tell her, slow down, because
Chief is right there. You gonna say,
so I don't take advantage of it. But going to school, using that route to become a part of the community, working to the community, doing the things that I do today, I see where it is possible. It is possible to work together as a community and don't have to be driving and be afraid of the police.
Jesus. Yeah. And I think it is possible for many communities. We live in a community that I think we do work cohesively, but there are a lot of communities that cannot and that they don't. And we see them in the media. So we will definitely talk about how does the media play a role? How do they play a role in how we view law enforcement? I'm going to start over here with you, Mr. Davis, and then we'll work our way through.
Media can make or break you.
Okay. Well, you would know this.
No, believe me, I
as a city manager.
I know it from being city manager, from being a politician, just everything. What in my relationship with them, I'm always up above water with them. I keep it 100 with them. And I've created a pretty good relationship with them by keeping it 100. Stay honest with them. If a mistake is made, we admit to the mistake. But we also, when I encounter a situation where a mistake was made by myself or anybody that's a part of me in my circle, we admit to it, and we let the media know how we're going to correct an issue. So I don't run from them.
Yeah. But how does the media portray law enforcement? How does the media's role affect our perception of law enforcement? I think that's the question.
I've never seen anything good recently. I've not seen one commercial.
We see some cat stories.
I've seen nothing. I think you got to realize negativity makes ratings. It sells papers. It gets you tuned into prime time.
It doesn't mean it doesn't happen.
Yes, true.
Okay.
So they're going to report it regardless. It still boils down how you approach it. if you approach it in an honesty situation, and own up to your mistakes if it was mistakes made. If you don't know the answer, tell them I don't know the answer, but if you give me until another day or a couple of hours, I'll have you an answer. Because that's what they're waiting to come back to you, because they don't forget. They will come back.
Because they need their story.
They need the story, and they have deadlines. So they want an answer.
Yeah.
So like I said, if you honestly do not have an answer, you let them know that.
Yeah.
But
Same question, Chris, about the media.
So I think with media, it does amplify whatever gets the most ratings. So I think, that's the purpose of media, to get the most viewers. Now, it does film what has been going on for years, though. It does make it make people more aware of that there is, again, systemic issues that are going on in law enforcement. But also, again, it does amplify, so it's a double-edged sword. It does amplify the negative to get the ratings, and it doesn't show the whole story.
Yeah. Yeah. Would you say it's sensationalism, Chief?
The media has a role. The media is a business.
Yeah.
True.
They make money. They have to pay people. They put on a production. They make money. So they have to put a product out. And I have to know that as a police chief. So if I know their role, I have to be cognizant, and I have to remember my role. My role as a community servant is to tell the truth when I can. And that truth sometimes doesn't match up with the media, with what they're trying to do. But I always have to protect an investigation. I have to protect victims, and I have to protect officers, because it's hard to play into the media's hand when they're trying to make money, but when I'm trying to protect and tell the truth. That's on two different paths, and I have to keep that cognizant, because at the end of the day, I have to answer to the community. I don't answer to the media. So it's a delicate dance, but at the end of the day, and I think it's all about your relationship again. People know if you're dealing with the Killeen Police Department and Chief Kimball that I am going to protect the truth. I'm going to protect our victims. I'm going to protect the officers, because you can vilify an officer. He may have done nothing wrong, but that's why you do investigations and things like that. So knowing the roles, and just know that in this department, we will protect truth, our victims and our officers, we'll protect and witnesses, because things can get out, and you always hear about the alleged or proposed things that officers do, but when they get cleared, you never hear about that part when it gets cleared. But so that's why we have our own media, and we have media like this that we can get those things out, that when those two paths are opposite from each other.
So I hear you saying that the media will sensationalize the bad. They will pretty much promote all the negativity, but if there's a positive outcome in terms of an investigation, you don't hear that follow-up story, or you don't hear that recant, right, of that negative story.
Well, you might hear, you might see
I've encountered where I've heard the recant, I've heard the apologies. Like I said, like Chief said, it's the relationship you build.
So there's that community thing again.
Yes.
I've never heard one.
Like,
I'm sorry.
and me coming from all, when I first got there was a lot of negativity. And I was acting police chief when I, committed suicide. So I was put into that role, even though I was retired, but I was put into that multiple role. Everybody was excited because it was a new beginning. Then I started putting programs in place to change that image of what we had, and it's going along pretty good, and we're still changing, and we're getting better every day. So that media, they like every now and then call, hey, what's new out there? I see some of the things that on social media that you guys are doing. So you got to give them something to make them hungry. Now they're going to cover more negative stories than they cover positives, but they'll come back and cover some of those positives for you if you have a great relationship.
That's good.
Awesome. So we will definitely go a little deeper and talk to you about your time as a police chief. Thank you so much for joining us for the first half of the show. I told you it was going to be a tough topic, and it's definitely a hot topic. We're joined by an amazing panel. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back in about 3 minutes after after words from this short commercial. Overcomers Talk. I hope you have been enjoying what you saw so far in the first half. Let me just remind you of what we're talking about. We're talking about overcoming the fear of the police, and we are joined by an amazing panel. Let me reintroduce them to you. You already know him. He's the visionary and the host of Overcomers Talk panel, and that is Apostle Dr. Pastor Lincoln Coffey.
Amen. Praise God. Bless you. Bless you. Thank you.
And also, we have First Lady, Assistant Pastor, the beautiful April Coffey.
My wife.
Oh, yeah, your wife, honey.
And of course, that's Pastor's lovely wife. We're also joined by the police chief of the city of Killeen,
Yes.
Chief Charles Kimball. Thank you so
My
much
God.
for being here.
Thank you for coming, Chief. Absolutely.
We're also joined by educator and combat veteran. We have Chris Awusu here with
Amen.
us.
Amen. Awesome.
And they call him the Black Moses. We're joined here by the city manager of the city of Marlin, Cedric Davis Sr. Thank you so much for being here.
Awesome.
All right, we have been having a hot topic tonight. We got into some dicey questions, right? And I think we're going to get even dicier. We're going to get even dicier. We're trying to be transparent tonight with our conversations as it relates to the fear of the police, right? And we do have some questions from YouTube and Facebook, and we want to ask some of those questions before we go back into our panel discussion. And so one of the questions is, how do we change the fears that police officers have of brown and black people?
So at the Killeen Police Department, our officers are we have trained and are in the process of learning your biases, your internal bias, your implicit biases. There are things that remember, police officers are people.
Right.
They're picked from the general population, and they come from different backgrounds, and they have some internal biases, and some they don't even know that they have.
Right.
I have, when I went to the class.
We all do.
Yes, I have biases that came
Wow.
out in the class. I have a problem dealing with teenagers.
Wait a minute, Chief, you have kids.
I do. They are young men now, but they were a challenge. But I viewed them differently. I talked to them. I really didn't know that until we took the class and it kind of came out. So knowing that I have that, I have to work on that when I speak with teenagers. When I'm speaking with teenagers in a setting, group or individual, I have to really buckle down and I have to concentrate and think about what I say. And that is what we do in our training with our officers. If you are uncomfortable, or maybe you didn't grow up around black or brown people,
Right.
maybe the things you are saying things unconscionable. You may not think it's offensive, but you may be offending people
Right.
while you're interacting with them. But during our training, our implicit bias training, we try to address those with our officers and our supervisor and our civilian staff, so that they can work on those, because we're people. Police officers and our staff are people that come from a myriad of backgrounds,
Right.
and some not even from this country. So there are cultural biases that come into play. There's racial, there's financial, there's all these
Socioeconomic.
this hodgepodge of things that sometimes you just don't know. There's if you're not from the United States, it's a certain bias that people hear when they hear that Caribbean accent or they hear that African accent. And certain biases starting to click, and sometimes they're prejudging, they're
Right.
prejudiced.
Right.
It's
My
wrong.
God.
So we train and we have people talk about that and try to smash some of those things that are wrong.
Hallelujah.
Now, is
See,
that something that's
see,
done
yeah.
nationwide? Like all police
Well,
officers have this training, or is this
yes.
specific to Killeen?
It really started about 5-6 years ago.
And a lot of diversity training has been around a while, but they didn't went and implemented like de-escalation training. What I try to teach or implement in my citywide and even in our police department in all areas of our city is you have to treat people the way you want to be treated yourself, no matter the color, because they all if you want to be judged by the color of your skin, say if you're white, you don't want nobody judging because you're white, so you treat people the way you want to be treated. And as an agency or as an organization, we have to present them the tools. That comes from diversity training. We might bring in talks groups to help them communicate better with the public. We have town hall meetings, and like it goes back to community policing. We have those type of engagements. We get into the schools, coloring days. We go color with the young kids, or we go tutor on a Saturday. It still boils down to treating people the way you would want to be treated, no matter of the color. It's the human being, the humanity of it.
Wow.
That's good. That's good. And so, in terms of dispelling the fears of Black and brown people, or police officers, it's all about training. Diversity training and exposure.
And exposure.
Exposure.
Yeah.
So continued exposure.
You know, the great thing about this community, about the clean community, is that there is a smorgasbord of people that live
Yes.
from different communities. I love eating out the different foods. One day I could be eating a Puerto Rican meal. Next day I'm eating Caribbean. Now I could be German food. And then you get to interact with the different
where you
cultures.
get the German food at? I ain't had
I'll
none
tell
since I
you,
left.
there's a place
Yeah,
I've
we're
heard
honored.
but then as I'm sitting down, we're talking, I'm learning your culture. I talked about his culture today, about him coming up in Jamaica and you know, the transition to New York, and me coming from Milwaukee, and you know, it's just talking, and my officers need to be able to have those conversations. It shouldn't be foreign just because someone is brown or Black or he's from the Caribbean or he's from Africa. They're people. And we teach our officers to have those conversations, get to learn them, and then do your police business.
Yeah.
You know, do your police business. You have even coworkers. Our building is made up of many people from different cultures. So just talking with your coworkers and getting that right on a daily basis and non-confrontational basis helps transition when you get into the streets.
One of the other questions that we had is, do police officers learn how to disarm without using a gun, and what is the policy? What is the policy on force?
Yeah, you know, it's, you know, forces, and if you go to our website, our use of force policy is posted yesterday in our transparency page, and you can see for yourself. But at the end of the day, we respond with the force that is responding to us.
Okay.
So if I am, the manager and I are talking, it's very non-confrontational. I can see his hands. I may have even patted him down, and I'm okay. But there are times you have to take into consideration some other things. Maybe it's 2 in the morning. Maybe it's a high crime area. I haven't had a chance to pat him down. People have said that he's known to carry a weapon. My response might be different until I can figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
Sometimes things happen very quickly. Sometimes, and we've seen that here recently.
Recently in Cedar Park.
And then you have to go from literally from 0 to 10 in a very short amount of time. And then, you know, you throw in video on top of that, you see about half a story. Again, going back, telling a true story, not just what you see on video, that sometimes you don't have to react. We teach people how to, when that force is presented to you, how to react, but it's all situational.
Yeah.
And it's hard to go through every potential, but what we try to do is a continuum. We start with the lowest level and work our way up as it's presented. But sometimes it starts here, and then we have to catch up.
And I'm going to piggyback off of that. What the public don't understand is a police officer has 1.5 to 2 seconds to make a decision if he's going to pull that trigger, or is there an alternate route he can take before pulling this trigger. Like the chief said, it goes from 0 to 60 like that. And in the academies, they normally tell you, you got 1.5 to 2 seconds to make a choice. Hopefully and prayerfully, you make the right choice. They tell you that. I don't know if they tell you that in Wisconsin, but in Texas, you know, they tell us that. I started with the Dallas Police Academy, and they tell you that right there. You got 1.5 to 2 seconds to make a choice. Well, hopefully, you make the right one.
But there's a lot of things you can do before you get there.
Before you get to that.
You just your mere presence, your communication skills.
Command presence.
You know, we talked a little about de-escalation. Sometimes you can just talk a person down.
Right.
Sometimes you have to just listen. So those, and we teach those skills are just just
Yeah.
as important as our hands-on skills.
Yes.
Because sometimes you can listen to a person. People just want to get some things off their chest. You sit down, you talk to them. I understand what you're saying. It's
Yeah.
about those listening skills are so important than some of your hands-on skills. And our officers do a very good job. Even the 3 years that I've been here, we have de-escalated a lot of incidents, and we're able to deal with those
I
without
want
using
to
force.
squeeze a scripture in there.
Of
You
course,
know, the
please.
Bible said a soft answer,
Turneth away wrath.
but grief words stirs up anger. And so that's just to drop that right there, because it's somebody's trying to de-escalate the environment, so you can come to a place, because when you're up here, your reasons and abilities are
you're not thinking
everything.
clear.
You don't think clear. The police, nobody thinks clear at that level, where things are just, some of the things medically, there is a flight or fight response that kicks
Reaction,
in.
yeah.
Am I going to fight or am I going to run?
And something that
When
I
your
learned-
adrenaline kicks in.
When
yeah.
you get into that moment in time, so those are the primary things that you start to experience, versus calculating what's the right thing to do.
And see, I remember when I was a young officer, I had a supervisor always tell me, you don't always have to confront. As a young officer, when you get the blue suit, that's what we call it. When we get the blue suit, we invincible. We're young. And if we make it past 3 years, we get wiser and learn. Blue suit don't mean anything because you can still be shot. But what they used to always tell me is, use your radio. The radio is much faster. You don't have to shoot anybody. Get on the radio, give a description, down the road. When we got into car chases, and we had the helicopter up, in Dallas we had Air 1 and Air 2. We called in because the radio was faster than the fleeing suspect. So like Chief said, there's a scale, and you try to go through this as fast as you can, making sure you put all the things in the right places before you take deadly force. Because like I said, when you got to all these different things and you get ready to take that deadly force, you only have a little time to do it. And that's always the last result of taking a life, because you want them to go home. I want to go home.
Yeah, yeah.
And and the pastor made a very good. He brought the medical end to it. And when you take your response that you just said about the fight and flight and the endorphins kick in and all that stuff, when you mix alcohol,
Yes.
when you mix
my
drugs,
God,
when
yeah.
Mental
when
health.
you treat untreated mental issues,
Come on,
that complicates the issue a lot.
Absolutely.
So just think about, you take all that what you said about the natural chemical things that are happening, but then you throw those other things in there.
yes.
It just
Yes.
complicates the situation. And our officers deal with that daily.
Yeah.
We are in the military community. We have people that experience
Jesus
war.
have
We
mercy.
experience that have untreated drug issues,
Yes.
untreated alcohol issues, and just the family stress of COVID and financial issues, and all that builds
my
up.
God,
And then
man.
you deal with the police. It could
Yep.
sometimes it's nothing. Some of the best training in the world can't deal with some of that.
So Chief, this is so important, because here is a patient now on a particular drug that causes the entire, just lose your perception of reality. The police officer is
deal with
called
it.
on the scene. So especially if they're not medical, understand that what kind of drug is on board, this person is completely just erratic. And so anything can go wrong in that moment in time when you see what I'm saying? Because this person, and so you'll see on the news that this person is being held down and being arrested, but this is a patient, somebody who's not thinking straight.
Right.
But nobody gets a hold of that information, that this person is on a medication, that if the police officer did not act the way they acted, they wouldn't leave the scene alive.
Right.
Pastor,
And
let me give you my personal view on that. My personal view is they need to hire social workers or people that has social working background within the police departments.
In the police department.
Because what has happened, society has put more on law enforcement. We becoming the parents. We becoming the doctor. When we ride on the scene, we don't know anything about their medical history. We don't know what we look at. Even though we take an 8-hour class and to give us the little basics, but people, I was just going to call you Dr. Fraser, but I'm going to go ahead and claim it. I'm going to claim it for you anyway. People
I
like,
receive it.
yeah, people like Dr. Fraser, you know, many, many years of experience of dealing and recognizing. So I think when they talk about this defunding the police,
Oh my God.
no, you don't defund the police.
You
You give
educate.
them the resources to hire people like her in that profession to be able to go out on those calls, you know, and they can make diagnoses. Now, even if they go out with the police officer role is a security measurement. That person, if they're not unarmed, if they're not armed, then they put all that training, all that experience to work to diagnose and de-escalate. So it doesn't really have to become a police matter. It's more of a medical problem.
So when I saw the George Floyd tape, when I saw it from a medical doctor standpoint, I'm hearing something that when I hear that in the ER, my protocol is ABC. Airway is the first thing. It's on top of the list.
Right.
And so when I hear I can't breathe, and I see the police officer there,
On his neck.
on a medical standpoint, I'm like, do something because that if you cut off the breathing, everything is gone. So when I'm looking at it, I say, wow, he doesn't have the ear I have.
He wouldn't listen.
And the kind of a training that I have to know that when the airway is compromised, the brain is affected. A noxious brain injury. That guy, he probably wouldn't. If he came alive, he would never be normal based on the length of time that the oxygen was cut off from his brain.
To me, that officer knew because the comment he made. The comment was, obviously you're breathing because you're talking. So
he had some kind of training.
He had. He's talking, but the point was, if somebody would have cut off your windpipe as an officer, common sense will tell you, I'm not gonna be able to breathe. Right. To me, I believe, looking at that, why didn't you get up, let him open that airway? He was already handcuffed. I'm still. I got to look at it as a black man, as a law enforcement person, just as a human in general. Common sense should have kicked in there. Common sense.
Sir, let me just share one thing critical here, especially in that area. So I'm sitting at my desk, and here comes a nurse running to the doctor. This patient is acting erratic, pulling down stuff, tearing down everything. Can I give him some Ativan? So Ativan is a sedative, which we give it to chemically restrain someone in the hospital. Can I give this person some Ativan? So with my instinct, I said, okay, hold on, don't give nothing yet. Let me go take a look, see what's really happening.
Yeah.
When I went around the corner, this person was fighting for oxygen, blue in the face. And the person looking at the person and think they're just acting erratic. But it was because of a lack of oxygen.
Yeah.
And I could have set up my desk and gave that sedative. Walk in there and found that person dead.
Yeah.
Dead.
Common
Yeah.
sense.
And as soon as I went in there, saw the pale as pale, I ran, had to put a tube in the, again, airway.
Yeah. Yeah.
First step. So again, education. As we talked about, educating education is very vital because if I, as a medical professional, hearing that, the first thing in my head goes against my training because it's airway, breathing, circulation.
Yeah. I think what you said is just so poignant, Pastor, about that education and the airways, as well as Manager Davis here. So if we know that the negative or the bad cops account for 2% out of the 100%, and 98% are doing a good job. 98% is positive, but we don't hear that in the media.
Yes.
But the 2% that stand out, we see the George Floyd, we see the Breonna Taylor, we see the Alton Sterling. How do we as a community, besides voting, besides community policing, how do we come together and say the 2% of you will not continue to give us a bad name? What, as police officers and as black men who have black sons, what do you think the responsibility is for us to address that issue?
I think it goes back in the case, these 2% work for somebody. They work for a police department. And let's say it was here in Killeen. I would hope that you hold me responsible. Now, I have to do things. I have to be transparent in my actions. We did the transparency page. we did the reform.
Right.
We part of our reform packages, we consulted somebody, and we consulted people, and when a prisoner says, or he makes a expression that they can't breathe, we don't continue with force. Now we're dealing with a medical situation. That's in our policy now because of talking to people like you.
So I hear you have policies to address
we
that.
have policies.
So these are guiding policies to guide
the city
that 2%.
of Killeen wanted a CALEA certified, and our department is accredited by best practices and best
What does
standards.
that mean, Chief? To somebody looking
Yes.
out there to say that you have an accredited police department with policies to address the 2%?
Yes, CALEA is the Commission of Accrediting Law Enforcement Agencies. That means that an independent panel has reviewed our policies. Our policies are within guidelines. We're not operating
What
on
kind
a
of
fringe.
guidelines? Are these state or federal?
It's a combination of both. They're best
National.
practices
Best
for our
practices,
profession.
okay.
We're not on the fringes. We don't do wild things. Our chase policy is based on the preservation of human life. Having that philosophy and moving forward with our training and our policies, that's what it's based upon. And then the community says, hey, we want a police department that is CALEA certified. We want a police chief that follows these policies. Get to know your police chief.
Yeah.
Get to know the people who are working, who have this power given to them by the Constitution to take freedom and take life. Know who those people are.
Yeah.
Because it's important, whether you have a 5-man police department or a 500-man police department, get involved.
So instead of being afraid of them, get involved and get to know them.
That's right. Knock
Get
on
to
that
know
door.
them.
How you doing, Chief? We are the association of educators in your community. We are the clergy in your community. We are the neighborhood watch in your community. How does this work? Talk to us. What is your policy? What is your policy on use of force, Chief? What is your policy when it comes to the preservation of life?
So come and ask questions.
That's right. Get involved.
And what's the platform for that, Chief, just for the audience to ask those questions?
I get paid by you. I meet with people all the time. That's what to me that's what that leadership does. That's what the manager pays me to do. That's what the city council expects for me to do. I meet with people. I make sure that we are trying our best to have the best foot forward all the time. And I get challenged on that. And I want to be challenged because I could be working in blinders sometime. I might not be attuned to some things unless someone brings it to me. So I want to be challenged. I tell my staff, I am the police chief. I am the highest ranking person in the Killeen Police Department. I am also the chief of police for the city of Killeen. For the 150,000 residents here, I am your police chief. That's the two paths that I work on. And sometimes they're not on the same road. So, but I have to balance that to make sure that I am doing what's right for the department and what's right for the city.
And see, I have an open door policy, and we have a complaint system, but people can actually walk in and talk to me. If I'm busy, then my city secretary sets an appointment. But other than that, if I'm just in there, not in a meeting or anything, I welcome them to come in. I get them a drink. What is the problem? Let's see how we can resolve it. But I keep that communication open with my open door policy. So.
Yeah, and so I wanted to ask, Chief, so is there more presence in uniform in the community, exposing our young men and young black male and black women to police officers in uniform not a action
In a
platform,
non-threatening.
but in a non-threatening. In other words, we're here. We're human beings. We think. We have perceptions. We're here to protect. And is that something that we?
Yes, it's something that we work hard at. We try to. It's a balance. For example, the weather's been cool here lately. We've been on bicycles. We have officers the kids see us in the morning time while we're on the bicycle. When they coming home from school, they see us out. So we try to do those things. COVID's been a little challenging, but when we have community watch meetings, I just had a thing with, I just got correspondence from the 7-Eleven Corporation about a community outreach with Slurpees. The Frosties, what I think that's what they call it. But that's important because that you never know who you may touch with that. just giving that bit of advice to somebody and being invited into the school system is huge for us. Man, we try to make any time in school, granted the school does have a police department, but anytime that we can support them because we're in the neighborhoods, we work together, and KISD is a good partner with the school system.
I would think that, go ahead, sir.
On that, some parents tell them when you're in the store or something, they see an officer in a uniform, they'll say, hey, if you don't behave, I'm going to get that police officer come over and get you. So that's already instilling that fear as a kid. Now look at, see, y'all guilty of it. See, look at y'all, some people be guilty of that.
Don't do that.
That's perpetuating the fear.
It is. And I used to always.
So that is perpetuating the fear that we don't want.
It is. And so they see, when they see that police officer in that uniform, they go behind mama and grab her legs and hide behind mama and peek around the corner. And I have to say, no, don't tell him that, don't tell him that.
Instead of walking to the police officer,
there you go,
say,
introduce yourself, how you doing? Right, so we have to, like you said, it's a community. She must be thinking about what's her son on the song.
I told my kids I'm going to call the cops.
There you go. See? So,
I'm the problem.
It's rampant, but, but we have to educate the parent to teach them not all cops are bad, because when at a time of need, you're going to call them, and they come to help you.
Right.
And in most cases, that's the truth.
Yes.
So we don't put that fear in them when they little, because they'll grow up thinking that.
And so it's really introducing them to the law enforcement officers. That's kind of what we're looking at.
I was saying, tonight I'm sitting here, and I've watched the news more than I've sat on a platform like this. This has never happened for me before. And so the media, right, who's not being paid by the people, of course, we support them, but we're not by law. This is not, we're buying their products. When I go and I pay for cable and I pay for whatever I pay for, I'm buying your product. But, I'm thinking about it like we've been so poisoned, if truth be told, because the way that this thing has been selling, I don't know for anybody else, but at least for me, I can only talk for me in my mind, why I literally had to stop over the last 2 months watching television. I had to stop because that thing was getting in my heart, because you're telling me I need to defund the police.
Oh, we still have to talk about that.
And what I'm saying is, did you hear what he just said about being educated about things like know your biases? Oh my God, like it's not just the police department needs that, the church needs it. Can you do a course and a class? Like people need that. Why people need that? Because city manager says this, you want to treat people the way you want to be treated. He's not the first person that says that. Jesus said it too. Amen. Jesus said it. But what I'm saying is, when we can hear our community leaders, because now I have to take a real position now, because I've heard both sides. Right. I've heard the media, but now I'm hearing the heart of the people who actually stand with us in our community. Standing with us. So this is very, very big for me. And now I know, okay, I want to know, how can I be involved in what you're doing to bring the change that we need to see here?
Jesus. Amen. Amen.
Be the change you want to see.
Right.
Yes.
So
That's
be
good.
the change that you want to
makers.
see. So let's talk about this defunding the police, because I heard you say, and I'm a clinical social worker and I've worked with law enforcement before, but I also heard you, city manager, say people like Carrie Ann to go out there. I'm going to be very honest with everybody out there in Facebook world and YouTube world. If you're being chased by a criminal or somebody is at your house, I will not come. I absolutely will not come. I know my role. I'm a clinical social worker. I will probably help de-escalate a situation after they have patted you down.
Okay, this is good.
Checked your house.
Yes.
Because I'm not going to get shot.
That's right.
Right? And you are in a position, and we understand the history of law enforcement, but we also understand the necessity of law enforcement, because real crimes happen to real people.
That's right.
And this real person is not going to answer the call, period. So I have heard of defunding the police. I don't know what social workers they're going to get to answer the call, or pastors, are we going?
Honey, I'm going to stay home and pray. There's no distance
I'm going to be
in the
right there
spirit world.
with you.
Well, Pastor, why don't you come on out there and
In the
pray?
spirit world, I am not
See,
going to
they-
go
go on out there and pray. They need
I'll
their
pray
prayer
for you
right out
at
there.
my house.
I don't know which social workers they're talking about, but it's not the ones I've been working with. But we realize the need for police reform because we cannot continue to see real people, which is most times black or brown, male and females, be killed. So we understand there is a real issue, and we understand the need for law enforcement. So can I say Black Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter, all lives matter? We should protest. I don't like the rioting. We can say, we can say all of that, and it can all be my truth. It can be all my truth, right? Because we realize exactly what is going on in the nation. And I know you have something to say about the defunded, as long as it doesn't include me going out anywhere. But go on.
I'm sorry.
Like I said, that's why we go along as your security force.
Right.
But I just believe that that specialty is needed as times change, and we're looking at there are more and more mental health patients. The veterans, you know, as being a veteran, I'm going to always be behind my veterans. But coming back from war, you know, they got issues.
Yeah.
Homeless people, they have issues. People who are just checked out of society have issues. Police are not adequately trained to handle that, in my opinion.
Yeah.
We, like it goes again, like I said, we get that 8-hour course. They don't make us professionals.
Right.
And we have to make decisions on the fly. I think it's better suited for people who have got years of training, education, and experience to help guide us to handle these individuals.
Right.
So no, I wouldn't say send Dr. Carrie Ann Fraser out there by herself. We'll be going with it, but after we make sure that it's safe, like you said,
Right.
you take over the scene.
Right, right. And so what we're talking about is social service, social service issues, which I worked for 8 years right here in Bell County with the Harker Heights Police Department. I started a social service agency working with law enforcement, and it was an intersection of disciplines, and that is social work and law enforcement in partnership to address toxic cases. And I will say that we saw a huge reduction in toxicity such as domestic violence and child abuse during the duration of the time that I was there, because we had an individual like myself who was able to de-escalate and mitigate those critical social service problems that you talk about here, Mr. Manager. And I know, Chief Kimball, I saw one of your reports. I do stalk you a little bit. I saw one of your reports on the crime level in Colleen, how it has decreased in particular areas. Can you talk about that for us? What exactly did you do, and how did you get that level to decrease in the city of Colleen?
Yeah, we were fortunate in I got here in 2017, and you know, we worked very hard in 2018. You know, we looked at some of the root issues, and we did some things internally to kind of be a little proactive, though we didn't have a social worker position you had at our neighboring police department in Harker Heights. But, you know, we did do something like I started an officer to deal with direct with the homeless, because we know there's mental health issues.
Right.
We know that there were some untreated drug abuse issues. So
that's a specialty position for a police officer, and his main position is
he was,
homelessness.
And you know, we had to give him special training, and there's a lot that went into that. And then I divided the city up, and I put lieutenants in certain quadrants so they can kind of deal with some things head on before it got to a point. Those neighborhood disputes, they can kind of deal with them and referee those things before the police got there. Those lieutenants knew those people and developed relationship with them and try to head some of those things.
There's that
off.
word again.
Relationships.
Relationship.
Yes.
Relationship in building the community.
2019 was a tough year for us, but we know we think we have a formula that works. But, you know, again, when you talk about defunding the police, I need extra funds so I can have more people that can get into those neighborhoods and be proactive instead of trying to be reactive to crime. Bringing in, looking in that data. We're a data-driven organization. People that know me, I'm a numbers guy. I got to pick up a piece of paper and I got to feel it. I got to see it. I got to analyze it. I got to do the math on it and say, hey, we need people here. I need people in this neighborhood. I need bikes in this neighborhood. Hey, I need I need an officer to go to the rec center and play with the kids, play ball with that neighborhood in that neighborhood. I got to bring extra resources. So if 40% of my murders are happening north of the freeway, I got to put people north of the freeway.
Yeah.
So those are the things that I can't defund the police to do that because they're going to take those services away, probably from the people who need it the most.
Yeah.
So we can't do that. But let's work together and use the funds that we have. And luckily, our city manager and the city council have been excellent. They give us more money in this upcoming budget year to try to address those issues. Can I use some of that money to get specialized training? Hopefully, I can have 2 officers working in a homeless, doing that homeless project, or have somebody specially trained in domestic violence to do some of the things that you did. So I need to. If you take those funds away from me, people who need it the most may suffer the most.
Yeah. Chris, and so with the kids that you're working with, again, and in the school district, what are some of the needs that you see? I hear Chief saying community policing, relationships, but I also hear you saying these kids, 13 to 15, are terrified of the police. How do we bridge that gap?
Well, a couple of things. I'm already in talks with he's a wonderful young man, 42-year-old officer. I forgot his name. He's a Hispanic gentleman. He was at Dillard's. I spoke with him Sunday. I have his card. I have his card.
We'll work it.
Yeah. But he told me he was going to come into the classroom, and he was telling me he was going to speak to the kids, and he was going to be very blunt with them. So I want him to see a real-life officer in a non-threatening manner. And also with the mentorship program, when we start off and kick off in late September, early October, I was going to ask Mr. Kimball to allow some officers to come and just talk to the kids, have an open forum, allow them to just reach out and ask them personal questions. How do you feel about this, et cetera? And so I want them to just be able to bridge the gap between seeing officers just on TV choking somebody to death, as opposed to, hey, my name is such and such. I work for the Homeless Outreach Center. The gentleman that you hired for the homeless team, wonderful gentleman. But I want them.
Officer Moore, Sergeant Moore.
Kyle Moore.
Kyle Moore, yeah. So I want them. I'm specifically targeting them to come and meet face to face with the children, and hopefully that narrative would be different. Yeah.
So again, building that relationship, going right back to community policing. Yes, Pastor.
And again, on the relationship, Chief, what can the church do?
Great question.
To be involved in this whole reformation.
I'm glad you asked.
I'm glad you asked.
I've been waiting for this question all night. As a police chief, and I tell I call them advisors. I have some advisors that are in the clergy, to include my own pastors, that people will talk to you, like I said, or that they won't talk to me. So you have an audience, and you also have resources. I have tax dollars. Tax dollars are limited, but you have resources. You have this wonderful stage. You have a forum that we can reach the masses with. I don't have that. You have the ability to bring your youth together in a youth group. I imagine that you have.
Yes,
Many churches have youth groups. And I tell everybody, if you got 10 kids playing checkers, we'll have a cop there to talk to them. Because they're in an environment that they trust, an environment that they're familiar with here at the church and the sanctuary, and I'll come in, I'll bring an officer in, and we can talk, and we just talk about real life. I have officers of different faiths, and we can bring in an officer that has the same faith, if it be a Christian, whether it be whatever it is, we can come in and we can talk. And that is the great thing about what pastors and what the clergy can do. You have resources, you have the children here, you have their parents and their family, non-threatening environment, and we love coming out to youth groups and talking to children.
And that's powerful. The church community, if you think about every Sunday, you're talking about 20,000 or more people coming together on one day. So can you imagine the power, the impact with working together? Right. How that would have changed the community for our pastors that are watching. This is a powerful tool.
And I really like the outreach. We've been very successful with our talking to females. And like my grandmother said, if you want a man to do something, a woman know how to change that attitude. So when I have my female officers, they come out and they talk to female young ladies, and we talk about some of the challenges and some of the things they're going to experience once they get outside the church. Because some of the things that happen in schools and the community, it's real.
Yes,
Human
sir.
trafficking is real. People are young girls, ladies are being trafficked. They don't even know it. But and they're getting set up for that. Those guys are setting them up for that next role. And I bring my detectives in, and they can tell them. We tell the parents what to look for. I mean, I see a 13-year-old with Louis Vuitton shoes in a Gucci bag, and she ain't got no job. Somebody gave it to her. If her parents didn't give it to her, but that guy is setting them up for that. For that next thing. Don't want to get on topic, but those are some of the things we have some real conversations, and those are the things that we hope that the clergy and the church can do for us.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Well,
Awesome.
we're on board, Chief. I can tell you that tonight is really, it's not like you're in a distant place as of tonight. You're here, and so you being here has really bridged the gap of the unknown. So you hear of the police over there, but when you actually interact with the police, it changes your whole perspective and what you thought of because you didn't see it. So you fear what you don't see.
That's it. That's it.
You tend to fear what you can't, you don't see it. You fear, so that.
And when you talk about partnerships, it's just not me reading police reports. It's with things that he see firsthand for his students, because those some of the same things that he's seeing. He's seen those Louis Vuitton shoes in that Gucci bag too, and he's wondering, well, how that 13-year-old girl? Somebody need to talk to her, because you see it also.
Absolutely.
So and that's how, again, those partnerships can all work in a circular way to make sure that if we say one young lady, one guy, one young boy from being trafficked or being taken advantage of, that's a win.
Because we do have a huge problem here in Central Texas. And I think, Chief, you just volunteered to come back and talk another topic, right, Pastor, on another panel.
I'll be bringing some help with you.
I wanted to say something. So we for the first time, I believe it was last year, we encountered working at any level with the police officers. So when that whole human trafficking thing happened, we invited the media. Two of our young ladies put together a program in the community. So we invited the media, and we invited, I don't remember what his name is, but he is over that whole thing where they're working with the, trying to get the people who's doing sex trafficking. And he left his number with us. He showed us the things to look out for. And he said, if you ever felt like you got a check, you need to reach out. Even if you're not sure, just a thought, give them the opportunity to investigate it. And we never forget, as pastors, we're sitting here, again, here is why we need community. Because I don't know what the police knows. I don't know what's on their database. Right? Did I say that correctly? Because I say schedule and schedule and data, right?
We understand.
So I don't know what they have on that system. So we had a couple that came here, but because we're pastors, and our hearts are, we want to help people. And people sometimes like to present their case like the police force is not helping them. And so they're coming to where they believe, of course, they're supposed to get help. So we're opening up our hearts. But as we were sitting there in the conversation, and they started saying, the cops are corrupt and they're involved in the human trafficking and stuff like that, I don't know what it was, but something in our hearts didn't feel right about it. And so my husband said, what we're going to do is, we're going to call the police. We're going to call the police. We called the police officer. The police came here. He had on his body camera and everything. And the moment he began, while the person was doing all the stuff and we were doing all the checks, just to find out that these two individuals have been on drugs. This is literally what they've been doing. They've been in a cycle of being in jail, all of that. We wouldn't have had that information had the cops not come to confront that if there was no community work. And since that situation was confronted, now we're dealing with those two individuals on a different basis, because now they need somebody like you. Community again, because we did not know what the cops knew. They had insight. They knew you've been locked up several times. You've been in a hospital for drugs. You've been doing all of this. But now you come to the church and you sell us this story. And we don't have, we're spiritual and we love God and we pray. But the church needs people like yourself. The church needs the people who are in the government. God designed it to be like that in the kingdom.
I'm going to piggyback, and I'm going to tell you something personal. I think you know. My daughter was taken one time, so I had to hunt follow a man 2 states over. And my family is in law enforcement in the federal level. We had to hunt to go get that child back. So it's real. But the problem is parents don't know who the kids are socializing with. And if you don't know, you better know, because they will be set up. And once they're gone, now you're into the hunt. So I'm kind of keeping back tears because you hit something that's personal. But I was blessed to get my child back, safe. But it's real.
Jesus.
So know who your children hanging with.
Yeah. And so what I hear you saying, Mr. Davis, is even as a law enforcement officer,
I never thought it would happen to me.
you were affected.
My
Yes.
God.
You were affected, and the same, and so even just talking about the fear, the same messages that a lot of our viewers feel are the same messages that you teach your children.
Yes.
But as a city manager, a police chief, a former mayor,
We might
your
have gone throw
child.
the teacher in there too.
and all of that stuff, you were still affected
Yes.
by this.
My
And
God.
so I think one of the things that is just an overarching theme tonight is there are good and bad people in all fields.
Absolutely.
And law enforcement is not absolved of that. Does bad things happen? Yes.
Yeah.
When it happens and the media portrays it, it's amplified. Does it negate the fact that it happens? Absolutely not. It does happen. But in order for us to mitigate, in order for us to change the narrative, we have to be involved in community. We have to be intentional in building those relationships. We have to vote, right? We have to be active. That is the only way. Protesting and rioting, that's all good.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, you have to be involved in your community and become intentional in what you do to truly affect change. Did I get that right?
Right.
Yes,
Did
absolutely.
I get that right? And it doesn't mean out there that your fear is not real. Whether you have experienced something directly with law enforcement or whether it is something that you saw on the media, we're not saying that your fear is not real. But one of the things that we are saying, rather than sit and continue to live in fear, it is time to get involved. Definitely vote, but also get to know your local law enforcement officers. If you don't have a good relationship with the ones in your exact community, then go find your chief. Go find your city councilman in your area, right? Go find your city manager. You just basically don't stop. Get involved in your community. We're down to the last few minutes of the show, and I want to give the panel the opportunity to talk about what's going on in their departments, in their city, in their communities, so that they can share with you different ways for you, the viewers out there, to get involved. All right? So let's start with you, Chief.
Thank you. First of all, Pastor, thank you for the invite. At the Killeen Police Department, we really like getting involved. We really want to be in part of the community, and it starts with me. I can't expect my staff to do it if I don't know. So thank you for the invite. Thank you to my good friend for inviting me. I can't say no to you. So, but I'm proud to be the police chief of the best police department in Central Texas, and I truly believe that. The military spirit. I'm a former military. My wife retired military. My kids military. This is a place where the Lord put us. And we work hard every day to get it right. As you go to our website, you will see our reform package that we put out. You see our transparency. Our numbers are there. We are your police department, and we know that there's work to be done, but we cannot do it by ourselves. It's been alluded to, we're not social workers, we're not educators, but we want to be part of the solution when it's time to bring those problems to the community. I'm glad to be part of this. I'm glad to be associated with you now. I look forward to our future conversations on sex trafficking and community and things, positive impact for our youth. I'm excited for that. I have a new partner in that. I'll be calling. I got your cell number. I'll be calling.
Yes, sir.
But a lot of good things are happening. COVID has really put a strain on that. We're trying to decide what we're going to do for Community Watch, because that's kind of been our flagship, our national night out, which usually happens in October. But we may have to do it virtually. We may have to scale it down. We don't want to get people together and possibly getting sick. But we're going to continue this outreach, whether we do it virtually, whether we do it in small groups. But we want to be involved, and it's going to start with me. And thank you for the audience and the stage to communicate with you and to the public.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
sir.
Chief.
That's amazing. Wonderful.
If anybody out there is interested in being a Colleen police officer, what do they... Put your hand down, First Lady.
It wasn't just me alone. We both, yeah.
We gotta check your traffic record.
He gonna give me traffic duty.
What do they need to do if somebody's interested
Yes.
in being, or even being a volunteer with
Yes,
the
please.
K-Cop?
Just
How?
you call down to the police department and say, "Hey, I want to. I want to volunteer. I want to be a police officer. I want to talk to the chief. I want to talk to the commander, patrol commander." Say, "I want to," and we will help you.
Okay.
But
Tell us the phone number to call.
sure, you can start with me. Call me at 254-501-8804, and we will get you started. I have a recruiter. You can talk with him about getting involved, getting for employment. And then we have a community outreach person, been there a long time, is Tammy Mosley, and she kind of handles all the community outreach to the department. So
Thank
it's an exciting place to work, and it's a great police department made of great people, and many, and I really have a push, I got to recruit, that we are making a push for people who live in this community to be police officers.
Okay.
It's your community.
Come on.
It's your community.
Come on, sir. That's
You
good.
went to
That's
school
good.
here. Be part of the solution.
Come on,
It's
sir.
easy to say, sitting on TV and say, "Man, somebody need to do something." You're that somebody now.
Awesome.
Come on, sir.
Thank you
That's
so much,
amazing.
Chief.
Powerful.
I'm going to go right across here to City Manager. What is going on in the city of Marlin? If you would please talk to the people.
A lot is going on in the city of Marlin. We're rebuilding Marlin from scratch. For decades, the history of Marlin has been a segregated town. Infrastructure bad. I took on a challenge last year. I think it was God sent. They had got a new mayor. She was God sent. So together we bringing new programs there. We're having citizens on patrol in our police department. We're making sure they're going through diversity training, make sure they get into the schools. So we're putting things into place so they can have that. For us, the infrastructure, we're now fixing streets. We're fixing sewage. We're going out. We're bringing in businesses, people coming in to look at Marlin. As they say now, and I actually had a reporter call me the other day, I see Marlin's on the move. Yes, we're on the move because we want Marlinites to be able to take pride in Marlin, for people to come back and be part of Marlin, want to be there. So if you're interested in economic development, if you got a business and you're looking for a place to start, come to Marlin and we can see what we can do because I need your help to grow Marlin.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Thank you. There's also something happening with the Marlin Airport.
Oh, yes, ma'am. November 7th, I'm sorry. We have a little country airport, but we're going to be having about 35, 40 planes landing on that little airport.
Okay.
We're restoring that. Our lake is right next to it. We're making it into a beachfront. We've got a lot of things going on in Marlin. And
City manager, you go.
it's a visionary. And like I said, I don't do it on my own. I think God gives me these thoughts. He put people around me, and together as a team, we go to work, we hustle, and we don't quit.
Amen. Thank you so much.
Wonderful.
All right.
Love that.
Chris, tell us what's going on with your mentorship program as well, and how can someone become a mentee or even a mentor?
Got you. So the mentorship program is called Boys Matter to Men. Boys Matter, and then the number 2 men. You can find us on Facebook, and or you can contact me, Chris Owusu, on Facebook. That mentorship program is for boys from 8 to 18, and it's we currently have a number of I think 8 to 10 mentors currently, and we're specializing in every week we either call or make contact with the young men, and we speak to their potential. We're all about pulling the potential out of young men so they can live a life of purpose. So that's our goal right there. Again, if you want to become a part of that, if you want to be a mentor, contact me, 254-285-7404, or Boys Matter to Men. You can just leave an inbox on that. Or if you want to be a mentee, you can, again, contact me. My number, 254-285-7404, or Boys Matter to Men, and just leave your contact information on the inbox, and we will reach out to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. And I know Pastor.
I just want to say thank you, gentlemen. Chief, it's an honor, and I'm looking forward to see, a future relationship that stems from this meeting and just us coming together as people in position and that could make a change and impact.
Yeah.
So I think with all hands on deck, That's what I'm hearing from this panel. All hands on deck will get us, if not where we need to be, but very close. And I'm excited about that.
Awesome.
I'll be calling you, don't you? I got your number.
And First Lady,
I am so hopeful.
you are?
Minister Kerry, you know me, you can tell. I am so hopeful, and I'm really honestly looking forward to work with my community leaders. I'm excited.
I truly hope you enjoyed tonight. I hope you learned something, and I hope that you're able to take something away. Tonight, our topic was overcoming the fear of the police, and we touched some hard topics and some hard questions. We laughed a little bit, and we got to know our police chief as well as our neighboring city manager. The first step in overcoming fear is really getting to know the community and getting to know the local law enforcement. Does that mean that bad things are going to stop happening? No. Does that mean that the 2% which perpetuate negativity and oppression to marginalized populations will stop? No. But what you can do is definitely get involved. Get involved in your local church. Get involved in your local police department, different organizations and different groups. This has been an amazing panel. Thank you for tuning in. And don't forget to tune in next week. We have another hot topic for you. We are talking about overcoming church hurt.
Okay,
Everybody's been hurt at some point
in the church.
by the church. And we have wonderful panelists joining us. We're going to talk about overcoming church hurt and what that looks like. So don't forget to tune in next Thursday at 7 o'clock right here on Open Firelight. And if you enjoyed what you see today, don't forget to sow into this panel. Overcomers Talk. Thank you, and we will see you next week.
Amen. Thank you.